Welcome to the Whiskey Congress. Honest, open talk dedicated to speaking the truth to those who are open to hearing it. Black, white, right, left. Most importantly, honest, bold, and fueled by good whiskey. In Whiskey Veritas, we are Whiskey Congress. Join the evolution.
Whiskey Congress is back in session, and Steven and I are together again. It's been a while, brother. I've really barely seen you.
Yeah. Just got back from a little vacation down in South Florida. It was nice and relaxing for the most part. Had some work stuff I was taking care of while I was down there, but for the most part, just good R&R.
Marco Island. That's
Yeah, Marco Island, man. That's the spot. It's the off season there because it's so hot down in Florida that most of the people who enjoy going down there, they're usually somewhere further north or here in Ohio.
December till April is probably
like
time.
it's so when we go down there, it's the off season, and it's easy to get in the restaurants and all that other stuff. We ate at a restaurant. What was it? Sunday night, and it was really good. Hadn't eaten there before. It was one of those places where it kind of looked like a hole, but the food was
That's
remarkably
my favorite
good.
kind of place, yeah.
But I mean, it was a high-end Italian menu in like a old pub style setup, and live music is playing, and I'm not a huge live music fan, but the band wasn't bad. The place kind of looked okay, and when the food came out, I mean, we were all just from the appetizers all the way through. Was surprised, and then the portions were big. It was nice. So I mean, it was.
I'm laughing because one of my favorite hangouts where you meet me all the time, the Irish pub, when there's live music there, you're like, I'm out.
Well, yeah,
because it's insanely loud. Because it's usually awful.
Right, it's incredibly loud. It's usually like Irish, like it's got some sort of Irish step dance thing to it. It's bad.
I'm just laughing about that.
Yeah, this place was pretty good. But yeah, no, vacation was good. Like I said, had some work things to deal with that stressed me out for a little bit for a day or two. But it was good. Although it is good to be back. And now I'm officially back and unemployed.
No, you are self-employed.
Yes.
As someone who's been self-employed for basically a decade.
Yeah.
Welcome to the club, brother.
Yeah.
Now the difference is you have a wife who can handle your health insurance issues. I don't, so I got to deal with that nonsense. Okay. But all right, that's an aside.
Yeah.
All right.
A little too much of an overshare there, but that's
whatever.
Okay.
You're married is not, I don't think, too much to disclose. Also, Zawahiri was killed with a missile strike while you were on vacation. And I all right, go ahead.
Well, he was. The way he was killed sounds pretty awful, but
gruesome. But
what he deserves. A special type of drone missile that doesn't quite explode. It just releases a bunch of blades and pretty much shreds you.
Cuts you into pieces.
Yeah,
which I feel weird feeling like fuck him. I have no regrets about his demise. But it's just so gruesome. I mean, chopping a human into bits is weird.
It's very James Bond,
yes.
Type of villain-esque sort of demise. But that's where we're. I mean, that's the.
But it prevents.
Well, it saves collateral damage.
Right?
That's
what I was
with. It goes in and it really minimizes collateral damage and. Because people were just, I thought Biden wasn't going to do drone strikes. What about all the innocent people? Like, well, it just took out the one guy.
Yeah.
He decided to show himself on the balcony, and that. And
can you imagine? It's my morning coffee.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you just kind of like.
That sounds loud. What?
Right, like that is a weird looking bird, and then all of a sudden, like, oh.
Again, it's hard to feel any empathy for this piece of shit. However, it's weird to think I'm cheering for.
Right,
just kind of a brutal demise of
and for those who don't know, who Zawahiri was. He was Osama bin Laden's second in command essentially. He had been on the run for
20
years now. Was a major part of planning the 9/11 attacks and other attacks against U.S. soldiers and civilians. So he was a bad guy. I mean, I think some of the political games that some of the Republicans are playing about, Biden said he wasn't going to do drone strikes,
Right.
and I thought we, said we were going to be done with Afghanistan. Like it's really like if we can't if we can't look at this as a win for the U.S., right, and you have to go to the, had it been Trump or had it been a Republican, you would have done what, right? Like, I mean, you would hope that any president of the United States who's got a chance to take out a known terrorist that has done the type of damage that this guy has done, like we could all get behind. But once again,
what I haven't heard anyone call this a false flag. I was ready for that.
Alex Jones has been busy.
Alex Jones has been busy. Let's talk about Alex Jones.
Yeah,
Alex Jones had a bad week.
Yeah, Alex Jones. I mean, he had he had quite the week.
Steve, I hope you were hoping you would go a whole show without me doing an Alex Jones perfect impersonation. But let's admit that I'm really good at this.
He he was standing trial. Essentially he had he was found liable. For spreading the lies about the Sandy Hook massacre where the kids were all killed. He says, a few years ago I stopped saying that it didn't happen, and I did say it happened a couple years ago. So we should, essentially saying, eventually I got around to admitting that it was real and stopped saying that it was fake and that they were crisis actors. So since I admitted that a few years ago, we should be good. And it's like, look, that doesn't resolve the damage that you caused, right? I mean, like some of these families, had people coming to their houses and people threatening them, and these people went into hiding because people were listening to people like Alex Jones saying that it was, that they were crisis actors and that was a false flag. I mean, these people lost their children, so they're not only dealing with the fact that they lost a child in a horrible fashion, but then they have to constantly relive that. And on top of having to constantly relive it because of Alex Jones saying that it didn't really happen, they then have to deal with, again, being harassed, being stalked, being, their homes being, maybe broken into or their property rights being violated by other people who, who don't believe them, right? I mean, so just... It's really...
It's unconscionable.
Right. I mean, it's just... look, I don't want to go... Actually, I will go to it.
I don't want you to. All right, go ahead.
Having a child, it just...
Roughly that age.
Right. For me, is the part that's the part where I can't imagine losing my daughter in any way, shape, or form, more or less, having someone come in and shoot her and then people telling me it didn't happen. Kudos to the parents that didn't just physically go after Alex Jones. Because I'm not sure.
Had this happened to you, and I don't want to go there, I will say this, Alex Jones would not have been in a courtroom.
No, I mean,
he would have been in a morgue.
Right, or I would be in prison for a long time.
Yeah. Steve, it's tough for me to even go there as your friend. Because if you had been in those circumstances, I would have probably tried to stop you from murdering him. Well, I would probably be unsuccessful.
Yeah, I mean, with something, and a lot of people say that, a lot of dads and tough guys say it. That's fine, but I know you, right? And it just, I can't.
And truthfully, Steve, I might be preemptive. Right. I might take him out from 300 yards away with my 270 and just say, "Well, Steve didn't do shit because I shot that piece of shit from 300 yards away."
It's just. And then, but the people, what's utterly amazing, while I was on vacation, I was on Instagram, and there were people that were, because Alex Jones made a quippy remark about Jeffrey Epstein. They asked him a question, and then he's on the stage, like, "Oh yeah, what about all the stuff that Jeffrey Epstein did?" Right, completely deflecting, and then everyone's like, "Yeah, Jeffrey Epstein, yeah, get him, Alex." And what I found is that there are a lot of people who support Alex Jones, believe all the shit that Trump said about him being a great American and he's this great American thinker. I'm like, the same dude who was talking about frog people, right? Like, you guys really think that this guy is an American hero? The guy who was trying to pump his supplements and pimp his supplements on the stand, right? Like, you guys think that this guy is an American hero? his week went like, look, they already found him liable. The question was, how much was he going to have to pay? It came out to about $50 million that he's going to have to pay.
Punitive and compensatory.
Right, and so the big key, though, what came out was, his attorneys accidentally, quote unquote, sent over like information from Alex Jones' cell phone from the last few years. And there was some pretty damning information on there, right? Like, I mean, because him and his staff, hey, Alex, hey, are you going to keep saying this? Because this is kind of end up like the Sandy Hook thing where you're saying stuff that isn't true. It could come back to bite us. And, he's saying, don't worry about it. Apparently, there was some stuff on his phone about January 6th that the Department of Justice and the January 6th committee is interested in. And, the prosecutors are going to hand it over. And everyone's just like, oh, well, that stuff's not admissible because they did it by accident. Well, look, I mean, so...
If OJ accidentally said, oh, yeah, by the way, I killed Nicole and Ron,
right.
It's admissible.
Yeah, and so this happens more often than people think, right? Like
really,
because and especially like in a large trial like this, where there's a lot of paperwork, a lot of documents, a lot of data that's going back and forth. Sometimes you send something over that you don't mean to. Typically, there's a time to cure, right? Like you have 10 days, 2 weeks, whatever, and then you're like, oh shit, I sent that over. So you reach out, you send it, and then you reach out and you say, hey, I need that back. As long as it's within a certain time period, then the opposing counsel typically needs to, the rules are set up that the counsel then has to send that back and not really attribute it to anything in the case. Okay, fine. So what happened was his attorneys send the cell phone stuff over. Prosecutors in this, or the opposing counsel inside gets it. I'm going to say prosecutors isn't the right term, but the opposing counsel gets it. They realize that this was probably a mistake, so they go back to Alex Jones' attorneys and say, hey, we have this. There's a 10-day clock that starts now. We'll send it back if you want it. Well, Alex Jones' counsel didn't say anything, right? They didn't say send it back. They didn't say, oh, that was a mistake.
That's privileged.
Right, whatever. And so once that clock runs out, then it's they got, they essentially got firsthand information from the opposing side. Now, the other issue here is that the information that they received is information that they asked for in discovery, but Alex Jones and his team said, oh, it's not available, we don't have it, there's nothing there, right? Like, do you have information about this X, Y, and Z on your cell phone? No, I don't have information about X, Y, and Z on my cell phone. There's nothing to send you. So then they accidentally, air quotes, send that very information over. And so where the crux comes in for the Alex Jones crew is not only did you not reply in time to get the information back, but it's basically obstruction because not obstruction because this isn't a criminal trial, but you screwed up the discovery process because this is information that was asked for, you said wasn't available, turns out it was available, and you should have held it over. So, you're fucking up the rules of civil procedure right there in terms of not handing the discovery when you were supposed to. So the question on, is this admissible? Yes, it's admissible because they didn't request the information back in the time that they were allotted to cure that wrong. And it was information that was requested in discovery that should have been handed over anyway. So it's absolutely going to be admissible. It is admissible. Alex Jones and his team can try to appeal it if they want to, but they'll lose on appeal.
We know they will appeal.
They will, and their appeal doesn't have
with
to,
a different lawyer.
But their appeal doesn't actually even have to be taken up. So you're not automatically granted an appeal, and especially in this case where you completely fucked it up on two separate ends of it. So that may buy them a little time, but ultimately, they're going to lose that as well. And and Alex Jones is going to end up having to pay it. Now, from some of the stuff that was on his phone, InfoWars is still making a lot of money, right? Now, are they? It said that when they were really going after it in I want to say, I don't know, I can't remember if it was 2016 or 2018. I think it was maybe 2016. They were making up to like $800,000 a day.
Wow,
a day.
That's a lot.
So
that's a lot, Steve.
I mean, so this whole thing that Alex Jones is broke and he's going to go bankrupt seems to be bullshit, right? Which is unfortunate because this is the type of guy you want to see just absolutely buried. And so the question is then, what does this $50 million verdict do to him from a financial standpoint to really, get rid of his voice?
Right.
And I don't know, right? I mean, because I don't really know what his financials look like. I don't know how hard. I mean, I'm sure even if he was making all that, he probably wasn't making all that now. And so, it probably will put a pretty big dent in his financial situation, which may slow him down. And he's also got at least one other case pending, very similar to this, that, if this is any sort of indication, then, the number could be up to $100 million that he has to pay out, which likely probably breaks him.
Kick in the nuts to anyone.
Yeah. So, I mean, he probably will end up filing for bankruptcy.
He has already done it.
Well,
and the judge admonished him saying, don't claim you're bankrupt. You
Right.
filed for bankruptcy,
but
that doesn't make you legally bankrupt,
Right.
so knock that shit off.
Yeah, I mean, like he doesn't qualify for bankruptcy right now, but you got to pay out $100 million, and all of a sudden, well, we'll see how it goes.
And good.
Yeah, I mean, he's another one I've got no sympathy for, just based off of the fact that he puts so much bullshit out there, and and the people who support him just show why he does it. Because there's people who buy it. There's people who believe it. There's people, like you and I could watch it and like, oh, wow, this guy's an idiot. And it's entertaining or whatever. It still gives him some sort of, like us even watching it
Right.
on YouTube or whatever
Yep.
still drives numbers his way. But there are people who watch it, not just for entertainment, but who think it's actual useful information, that think it's true, that believe they're not even conspiracy theories. They're just lies. You can't prove that that's a lie. Like, you can't. There's nothing in there that makes you believe that this is true. Well, this other guy on YouTube showed me these documents while his mom was bringing him fucking Oreos and milk. Okay. So, and the problem is a guy like Alex Jones and where we're at as a country, he'll always have a platform because people want him to have a platform. They want him to say those type of things. And part of it is because of their frustration with our government, which our government has done nothing to have a lot of faith in them because they can't get anything right. Like everything is, like going back to COVID, right? Like, oh, it's not a big deal. Oh, it's a very big deal. Oh, you have to wear 2 masks. Well, apparently you don't need 2 masks. Oh, you have to have a vaccine. Well, the vaccine's not going to, just all the back and forth. And look, if you've got common sense, you've lived in the real world long enough, you realize that there's nothing that's black and white, and the government doesn't get everything right. But when it's just screw up after screw up after screw up, and we can't get anything right in Congress, we can't get anything right in the Senate, everything is a fight, everybody's lying, everybody's saying that everybody is lying, then what happens is you create this scenario where people start to look for alternative sources of information and are willing to believe people who are consistent, right? And Alex Jones is, if anything, consistent with his bullshit,
yeah.
right? And people get behind it, and now the people that he has behind him are passionately behind him. They're in that conservative camp. They're in that Second Amendment. Everybody wants to take our guns and enslave us to the progressive Democratic left agenda. And we're going to fight that nonstop, and we're going to make Alex Jones a hero or a martyr. Any conservative voice that says what they want to hear, they don't care whether it's factual or not. They don't care whether it's even plausible or not, right? They will figure out a way to make it plausible. They will figure out a way to support it and back it, and then they will figure out a way to blame progressives and Democrats and the libs and everybody else to fight this culture war because it's just not about policy anymore. Right? It's just not. It's just about you either think like us, act like us, do what we want, or you're against us. And if you're against us, then we need to silence you and put you down. Right? And that's the thought process on the left. That's the thought process on the right. The problem for the left is that more of the people on the right are crazy with guns. Right? And you guys are you got that Sean King guy. Remember Sean King?
I do.
He was like Black Lives Matter, and they accused him of being white and pretending to be black, and I think he's a very, very fair-skinned black guy. But the funny thing with him is, so he used his nonprofit money to buy a $40,000 Mastiff for protection because he lives in New York. In New York, he said, "Oh, I can't have a gun in New York," and he didn't want a gun.
I know the story.
So he spent $40,000 on a dog, and on a specially
That's a
trained
big-ass
master,
dog, yeah.
right? And then he had to give the dog back because he said the dog had too much energy. But he got the dog because white nationalists, and I believe that there were people who were stalking him and threatening him and everything else. But the guy also has a shitty reputation of taking people's money and then using your nonprofit money to buy a $40,000 dog does not necessarily go over well. But again, that's the guy on the left, right? That's the poster boy on the left, and the people who follow him are people like him. While Alex Jones has the fucking psychopaths that build, an AR-15 every other fucking day in their basement, right? I mean, so progressives, Democrats and progressives, I'm not sure if they're fully aware of who they're dealing with, because you guys are going to keep going at it. You're going to show up to a gunfight with fucking I don't know
Mastiff?
what, right? With a dog and a sign that says, "Hey, we don't like you."
All right, we can write a strongly worded letter,
right?
But here's the thing. Here's what I think is a big deal. Is Rush Limbaugh spawned a genre of anti-government, anti-liberal, whatever. And a ton of people jumped on that bandwagon, Alex Jones among them. And they did it without consequence for a very long time. Sandy Hook, 20 children were murdered by a psychopath. And Alex Jones took that as an opportunity to be the victim. And this is a bit gross, but I know exactly where I was when Sandy Hook got reported. Because I was going to go pheasant hunting with some friends in New York, very conservative friends. And their initial reaction was, "Oh no, now they're going to take our guns away." And I literally said, can we take a day to say it's awful these children were murdered first? But their first reaction was, here's what's going to happen to us. Now, by the way, the number of gun rights taken away because of Sandy Hook it's actually not zero, because New York, even though it happened in Connecticut, New York put in one of the dumbest gun laws ever, and unfortunately codified some of the complaints and concerns of my friends. But bigger picture, it's good that Alex Jones is being held to account, because what he's done, what he's made millions of dollars off of, is trolling families that were dealing with their children being murdered.
Worst day of their lives.
Yes.
Right. Worst day of anyone's.
That, frankly, I can't put myself in those shoes. You can't put yourself in those shoes. You can't closer to me because you actually have a child. But it's the fact that people are playing the victim of the government. How about the victim of the fucking psycho who killed people? And then to try to if you can go to the home of a person whose child was murdered and tell them you're a crisis actor, you're faking it, how do you sleep at night?
Well, I mean, and apparently he slept just fine, right? I mean, he did. He slept just fine.
He Scrooge McDucked into a swimming pool of money. Fuck Alex Jones.
Right, and the people who follow him believe him, right? Same thing. I think it's beyond trying to figure these people out, and just recognizing what you're up against and what you're dealing with. Right, and understanding that, I mean, this is very similar to, the reason why we couldn't win a war in Afghanistan or a war in Vietnam, because this isn't about logic. This isn't about people recognizing when they're beat. People have these ideals that they're fighting for, right? That they're willing to go to extremes for. That, in Afghanistan and Vietnam, that they were willing to die for. And you are getting to that point. The more this is about just what I believe and ideology and things that I like versus things that I don't like, the further you get away from being able to bring people to the table to have a sensible conversation on how to resolve the issues and move forward, right? And we're not moving forward, right? We're getting further apart. Things aren't moving in a way where it seems like, all right, we're getting to some form of semblance and unity. It's becoming more and more divided. and it's being fed by people like Alex Jones and the departed Rush Limbaugh and Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham and Tim Pool and even Joe Rogan is not quite in that conservative camp, but
he's not even close.
But he's still a part of that. If you say something against me, I'm going to troll you for it, which doesn't help because even though Joe Rogan isn't in that camp, he's been co-opted by the people who follow those people in that camp, right? The same people who root for Alex Jones, right, and support everything that Alex Jones said are, Joe Rogan says enough to where they say he's one of us. Whether Joe Rogan says I'm not, right? He can say I'm not all he wants, but every time he says something to reinforce their beliefs, they say, yeah, well, you can say you're not, but you are, and you're one of us, and you're in our group. And that's something that he's got to deal with, and he's dealing with it just fine with his $250 million contract from Spotify. So, we're in a bad spot. I don't know what resolves it.
But I do think it's a step in the right direction that Alex Jones is being held financially accountable for his nonsense. Because
it depends.
Because the likelihood of someone else to jump into that pool is not like, oh, there could be a consequence for it.
I don't because yes, you're right, maybe. But if Alex Jones is able to, you can't stop him from going on his show. I mean, as he's in this trial, he was on his show talking about the judge being maybe a part of a pedophile ring, right? And then and that's kind of what led them down the path of letting them know, like, hey, by the way, we've got your phone because you said you were going to say it on your phone.
When he said you have your Perry Mason moment, I don't think I'm old. So I know what that means. Oh,
I do too.
I know you do too.
Yeah, I mean, so it's just, look, I mean, it's a really unique problem that I don't know how we get a handle on because even while we sit here and say, all right, if he's got to pay out $100 million, maybe he goes bankrupt. But I mean, he's not even on. It's not like he's on YouTube. He's not on any sort of platform, so he can still do what he's doing. And the people who support him, this didn't open their eyes and say, oh my God, this guy is a liar and a scumbag and a piece of shit. No, they said, no, we support you more. This is a kangaroo trial.
Yep.
And people, I'm sure people are sending him money. I'm sure he's got some sort of, help me, fight the globalist. And people are he may not even have to put anything out there. Someone probably started a fundraiser for him. I'm sure there's some conservative lobbyists, corporations or whatever that are dumping money his way, and that's where you're right. We are holding him accountable, and we can say that. But in the end, he's still going to be able to do the very thing that got him into this position, and other people are going to see it and be like, well, if Alex Jones can go through all that and still survive because he's a survivor and everything else, then I'm tough like that too. So I'm going to continue down this path. Now, the question is, if they get held accountable for saying something stupid, right, or do they look at it and say, all right, I can't be that dumb and say something that wild, but I can still say all this other wild shit that I'm saying, and they likely don't get held accountable because, think about what Alex Jones had to do to be held accountable, right? Kids had to get massacred. Then he had to go and say, after those kids were massacred, after those funerals, after those parents had to deal with all that, then he had to have the balls to be able to say, yeah, you're all you parents are just crisis actors. This is all a false flag. Well, and he did it for years.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so that is extreme. So a person could look at that and say, all right, he's being held to account because he went too far. But I can still say there's frog people. I can still say that there's, a pedophile ring under a bowling alley somewhere in Kentucky. I can still say all these sort of things because as long as I don't get too specific on something that's too gross, then we're good, right? So yes, we're holding him to account. That's good, but does it really do anything to stop him or to stop anyone from doing similar things, just not quite that bad? I don't know. I don't think so.
All right. Well, I'll just go back to fuck Alex Jones.
Yeah, fuck him.
To me, he's a bigger detriment than Zawahiri in terms of current day.
No, I mean,
Zawahiri's
got 3,000 people
No.
least.
No. In the current day, anyway, that was.
I mean, Zawahiri has real blood on his hands.
Yes, absolutely.
Right, that he caused.
I think they both do. The difference is Zawahiri. Honestly, I had forgotten the guy existed until we took him out.
Well, there was also a rumor that he was already dead. They said he died from.
And they said about Bin Laden
he died from an asthma attack. I'm like, okay.
He
died from an asthma attack. We don't know where his body is, but he's good. Like, okay.
Anyway, fuck them both. Let's talk about Liz Cheney for a bit, though, because both Kevin Costner and Dick Cheney have gone on the record as saying they support Liz Cheney. Now, we've talked about Liz Cheney quite a bit on our show, and we had a bit of a back and forth because you pointed out that I was supporting her, and yet I had no idea who the fuck she was until she became relevant for having the.
Well, it wasn't that you were supporting her; it was that you.
I was defending her.
Well, no. My issue was you, not necessarily defending her, but it was you were defending her with an asterisk and a bash. Like, she sucks because she's Liz Cheney, and I don't agree with her. And it's just like, all right, well. Do you know her voting record? Is there a particular issue that she's done? And look,
you're not wrong. I conceded to that.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. Now, look, when I went back and I looked at her voting record, it sucks, right? But I think that again, I'm just going back to that previous argument. Is that feeds into it? That her name is Liz Cheney. I know who her dad is, and she's a Republican. Therefore, I don't like anything about her, even though all I know is her name and who her dad is, right? And presumably where the state she lives in. But other than that, that's all I know about her. But I'm going to bash the shit out of her because of that. But now she's doing this thing that I like. So now she's a good guy, and I actually like her, right? And that's kind of, like, to me, like, that's just, I don't know. It's...
Go ahead. Do it.
No, I mean, it's just like, look, I mean, like, I think I don't have a problem with being with the person changing position based off of new information, right? So we have new information about Liz Cheney that she has pretty strong feelings about January 6th. That is something worth commending, and the position that she's taking is worth commending, right? But going automatically to the otherwise I wouldn't like her is just like, there just needs to be some information to back that up, right? I mean, so you don't get caught in that position of, well, what is it that you don't like? Oh, I don't like her dad. What the fuck does that have to do with her?
I don't like her dad.
Which is fair. Her dad, we can go through a laundry list, right? I mean, if you can start with him shooting someone in the face.
No, I can go way before that.
But I'm just saying, you don't even have to go in the politics. It's like the dude shot another guy in the face.
And that guy apologized to Dick
Cheney, which was fucking wild. Which, I mean, we're basing that off the HBO movie, though.
No. I actually have inside information on this one.
Okay.
My cousin worked for the State Department at the time. And he told his dad, who's also my cousin, that like a couple days before it got announced, he said, if this guy dies, we don't know what we're going to do. But Dick Cheney shot this guy in the face.
Christ.
Yeah, so now my cousin didn't tell me this after it all played out. So I did not have inside sources.
Right.
Inside sources. Ahead of time.
But
I learned about it. Yeah.
The whole idea that the guy's like, hey, I'm sorry my face got in the way of your gun. So sorry. I
tell your friend, if a hunting buddy who was a Republican, I lived in southern Ohio at the time, I told him, you know what, if we went hunting together and you shot me, I might forgive you. I might even hunt with you again. I'm not apologizing to you if you shoot me in the fucking face. I'm sorry, I'm not. Yeah. Thank God it was a 28 gauge because that fat old drunken douche couldn't handle a real gun. That's not fair at all, but whatever.
No, but as it relates to Liz Cheney, though, I mean, I think her dad coming out and supporting her actually makes sense.
Crashing Trump and saying he is the biggest threat to this country forever.
And listen, but Cheney, Bush, like those types don't like Trump, right? And have come out and said it, right? And Trump goes on his name calling spree. If you don't like me, then you're a fill-in
Rhino,
whatever.
Blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
And I think like Kevin Costner is sort of an old school conservative, in and of itself, but I think he's
also the star of Yellowstone, which you're a huge fan of. I have yet to watch, but
what the fuck does that have to do with it?
well, just that's why he's relevant in Wyoming.
Oh, okay, true. But actually, if you watch, Kevin Costner has a lot to do with that show in terms of production and producing, and I'm sure he's directed episodes. I know he's directed episodes. And the thing about that show, if you watch that show, there's a lot of people who watch it and love it. Oh, it's country. Oh, I want to live out in the country and drive trucks, and that's the life that we all need to be living. But if you watch that show, some of the things that they say in that show go directly against a lot of these conservative tropes that are out there, and I think that's a huge Kevin Costner influence, right? Like, because there's an episode where there's these PETA, like they're not PETA because whatever,
of course
but
not.
But they're these very progressive activists, right? That are vegans and they're anti-farming and they do all this protesting. Sure. And Kevin Costner pulls the girls aside and says, "Come with me and let me show you something." So the girl reluctantly goes with him, and she's talking about being a vegan and all this other stuff, and he explains to her, "It's like, where do you think all that vegan stuff comes from that you eat?" And she's like, "From the earth." And he's like, "Yeah. But where does it come from? Right? Like, it's farmers, people like us. Like we farm, like it's like we just got cows, but people who and how do you think we grow that? Like, oh, from the land, exactly. And when we do that." Right, we got to till the land, we got to prepare it, and when we do it, right, like we do it on a regular basis to make sure that you've got the food that you want to eat, whether it's sprouts or lettuce or whatever, but we got to till the land, which means we kill everything underneath at the time, right? If there's gophers, if there's whatever, we go through and it kills them, right? But what it does is it allows us to put food on your plate, right? And it's that same food, whether you eat meat or not, right? Like there's a price to be paid for the food that you eat, right? Unless you're going to grow all your own food and just be completely sustainable on your own farm or on your own little patch of land, if you're going to rely on somebody else to do it, you have to understand that there's a give and take, right? And it was an interesting moment on the show, but there are other aspects where they're talking about environmentalism, they're talking about it from the vantage point of a farmer, but they also talk about how important the earth and the land is to farmers, especially out there, and preserving that, and how their mission isn't that far disaligned from these vegans and a lot of these other progressives, but they get a bad rap because they're farmers and because they're conservative and whatever. But there's my point is, it doesn't surprise me that Costner is supportive of Liz Cheney and willing to like bash or Trump. Her dad, it's not a surprise. We've heard what Bush has had to say about Trump. Most of his camp is in that same sort of mindset in terms of what Trump is and who he is, and the detriment he is to the country. And so to me, that's not a surprise. And I think what Liz Cheney is doing is worth talking about because, this is political suicide for her. Seeing where the party is going, right? Like the few conservatives and Republicans that do support her, they're in the minority. They're in the gross minority, and the party is becoming this thing that resembles what Trump.
Chicken shit. I won't oppose Trump group,
right?
And this is why this goes back to the beginning of the discussion. Is Liz Cheney and I would probably agree on very little, but I respect her for being principled in what she believes in. If you believe what you believe and I disagree with you, okay, we can discuss that. But she didn't fold like a cheap tent, unlike the rest of the Republican Party that bows down to Trump, and it's pathetic. And if they don't reclaim their party, then that party is going to become what it is.
No, the party, it's there.
It's you know what? You're right. I'm talking about the future. It's the present.
Right. I mean, they had to their time to reclaim their party was back in 2015, 2016. You had to get somebody else.
You had John
there.
Kasich out there. I don't know, you get pissed at me. You always
no.
I
don't. No. I voted for John Kasich. I literally switched my party affiliation to vote for John Kasich again. I don't know how many times I have to say this because I saw what Trump was and how dangerous he was. So I literally switched my party affiliation, voted Republican specifically for John Kasich, told other people to do it to help push him over Trump in Ohio, right? have limited influence. I would love to say that I was able to get 1 million people on board, but maybe I got 5. But
my ex-girlfriend did the same thing and literally said it hurt my vagina to do this, but
right.
I voted for John
it was
Kasich.
just like, look, because I just felt that Trump was going to be this devastating bomb that was going to go off if he got in the White House, and he was.
Yeah.
Right. And so I don't.
Now that's one situation where you look back and say, "I called it. Y'all didn't want to listen."
Right.
You can bang that drum all you want because
and as it relates to John Kasich now, the issue is that we're so far away. Like the Republican Party and that side of things, they're so far away from John Kasich. Like he wouldn't stand a chance. Like Trump, you put him on the stage with Trump, and Trump is going to walk all over him. Like that's just it. You put Kasich on the stage with Trump, especially this day and age. Like, because how old is John Kasich now? Like he's got to be another one that's got to be in the 70s.
I looked this up the other day because we had an off the air back and forth about this, and he's like, he's like 70 years old.
Yeah, I mean, you're just not like that's not if you're gonna dethrone Trump in that party, it's not going to be with another 70-year-old guy mumbling around.
Well, we both know it's going to be DeSantis, yes.
I mean, Nikki Haley was on the shows this morning, and she was making a strong push. I think she's going to throw her hat in the ring. It's hard to really find any sort of. It's hard with her because she did so much kneeling and kissing the ring of Trump while trying to not do it at the same time that she's going to be hard for anybody to really get behind. I could easily see Tulsi Gabbard trying to throw her hat in the ring on the Republican side.
She's a former Democratic congresswoman, though. She's got no.
Yeah, but that's the reason why she spent so much time on.
She pisses me off because I was an endorser. I was a endorser of hers.
I told you.
Okay, you're so smart. I'm not going to give you the Happy Gilmore apology.
You don't have to.
I'm not going to.
You know I'm right. But I mean, I think from on the Republican side, I think you're going to have challenges. It's going to be another sort of broad field. I think DeSantis is the one now. That nightmare scenario of Trump and DeSantis teaming up together is a really bad sort of scene.
All right, here's where I want to push you on that because I've thought for a long time that there's no way DeSantis would be Trump's VP nod. And I thought that because I don't think DeSantis respects Trump. You've said multiple times that he's kind of taken the playbook and run with it. And then there's this just lightning rod shot through me. Like, if DeSantis would get the deal that Trump wanted with Kasich, where he basically said, I have no desire to do the job. I just want to be the guy. And if DeSantis looks at that and says, I can spend 4 years doing what I want as the second in command and literally be a 12-year president if things go my way, that's terrifying to me.
Maybe.
No. I hope it doesn't happen.
You're correct. That is the ultimate nightmare scenario. But part of me, just looking at the VP role over the history of the presidency, right? If you look at Pence, even if you look at Harris right now, right? I mean, Al Gore, Biden. It's just. I think there's. I don't think it's a desirable role. I think even if someone promises you that you'll really have the keys, I think it's hard to take that. Now, look,
I hope you're right, but I can see DeSantis being, I'm happy to be the puppet master. And
we'll see. I mean, and this is why. I don't want DeSantis either.
You've been way more outspoken about DeSantis than most people I know.
I don't want him either, but I think that he's the only one who can beat Trump. And look, he's dangerous for any litany of reasons that I've talked about before. You could go back and listen. And
it's only things you've said that made me fear this. I can see him saying, I'll be the puppet master behind the scenes, and this dopey old fat douche will take all the heat, and I'll do what I want, and then in 4 years, I'll be the undisputed frontrunner for the real gig, and then I'll be an incumbent after that.
Maybe. But the other thing...
And thanks for putting that nightmare in my
life. But, there's also... I think DeSantis has separated himself from Trump to a degree. I think he knows the toxicity of Trump at this point with all the January 6th stuff coming out. I think that there's enough motivation for DeSantis to push past him, and I think that,
and he might well say, "I'm not taking second chair to you because you're a fucking dope."
Yeah,
that's a very real.
Right.
If I'm in his shoes, I'm like, "There's no way
I don't need you."
Kowtowing this.
I mean, because I think he could easily say, I just don't need you. I could take a decent chunk of your people. I can get more people. I don't need you. I will actually surround myself with better people that are smarter than your idiots that you have around you. Like Roger, I'm not going to have a Roger Stone and an Alex Jones and all those guys. Like they're not going to be anywhere near my White House, and I don't want to play those bullshit games. I'm going to bring some level of sanity back, but I'm going to rule with the iron fist the way I want to do it, and just really tell them to go fuck right off. And I can see DeSantis doing that,
which I think is probably the more likely event. However, I am scared of the whole. I'm going to sit back and wait for my pitch and just knock it out of the park. And that brings me to J.D. Vance in Ohio, who is a disgusting human being. You and I have spoken off the air about J.D. Vance. And he basically said, well, if you're in a marriage and it's abusive, you just stick with it because that's what God wants. I mean,
look, right. I mean, like, J.D. Vance is a guy who was just, he had said he had come out against Trump previously, and he's another one. Like, what's funny is he beat Josh Mandel for the Republican Senate nominee, and Josh Mandel had been kissing and licking the boots of Trump, pretty much from get go, right? And then J.D. Vance. The reason why he was somewhat of a viable candidate because he wasn't as ridiculous as Mandel, and he had come out against Trump. But then all of a sudden, J.D. Vance recognized that maybe there was something to Trump. So then he flipped and jumped on the Trump train and has gone full, Christian Republican. We need to have a Christian state sort of deal, which is the movement that Mike Flynn and those types are pushing for. Like, they're literally saying it out loud, that's the U.S. needs to be a country bound by God, and we need to be Christians first, and then the Constitution, and we need to adhere by the rules of the Bible and all this other stuff, which is really dangerous, right? Because it's no different than Muslim state or
authoritarianism.
Authoritarianism.
Thank you.
I mean, it's exactly what that is, and that's the direction that they want to go. And what's crazy is that everyone's just, the people who follow him are like, yeah, totally, legit. Like, we don't see any problem with that whatsoever. And then the number of politicians that are just folding like wet paper bags saying, yeah, I'll jump right on it, right? Knowing the skeletons that they have in their closet, right? Like, I'm sure J.D. Vance has all sorts of bullshit in his closet, right, that doesn't go along with the conservative Christian right narrative, but yet here he is, and here they are, and they're continuing to push it. And the alternative is a Democrat named Tim Ryan. He ran for president. He was a congressman out of Ohio. He has really
neck of the woods, I believe.
Yeah, he's a Youngstown guy. He's from Youngstown. He actually lives very close to my parents. I don't have a strong relationship with him, but I know him. And I think, listen, I think he's a legitimate candidate. I think he could have been a good presidential candidate, but I think he was just too tame at the time. I think the spotlight might have been a little big for him, and he was trying to figure out what his messaging was, knowing kind of like because there were so many people in the Democratic field. But I think he's found his voice and he's found his footing running for Senate. I believe that he'll beat J.D. Vance. I think that ultimately J.D. Vance has just said too many stupid things. And there's enough sane people left in Ohio where...
Are there?
I think there's just enough where Tim Ryan can win that Senate seat.
Steve, I'm glad to hear you say that because you are more of a cynic than me when it comes to things like this.
I am.
Typically.
Yep.
And maybe there's some hometown bias on your part, but Tim Ryan to me is a logical, sane, honest guy. And I get his stuff pops up in my social media, give me $5 because I want to bring sanity back. And the fact that he has gotten your endorsement on the show.
Anyway, yeah, I mean,
is encouraging to me because you would not be shy.
No. If I didn't like him, even if he was from Youngstown, I would be honest. But I think, he comes from a position like, listen, the place where I come from, Youngstown, has had it rough, and a lot of places have, but Youngstown has had it rough, and still going through it. Drugs, violence, all this sort of stuff, and
corruption.
Yeah, I mean, like all sorts of. I mean,
like being a Buffalo guy, it's kind of a larger scale. The same thing. There's lots of industrial abandonment.
Can I finish?
Sure.
But I mean, not because I don't want to sit here and bash on Youngstown for the next 20 minutes because it's easy to do. But my point is that I think that based off of what Youngstown has gone through, Tim Ryan can connect to a lot of these other cities, whether it's Toledo or Dayton, some of these other cities in Central Ohio who have gone through similar things, that have lost manufacturing, that have that have had a huge brain drain, right? Like the smart people leave, go to Cleveland and Columbus or Cincinnati, or they just completely
North Carolina.
leave the state. Yeah, go to North Carolina, go to New York, whatever. And some of the things that he's talking about can help those places, can help the state overall sort of combat some of that and help to bring people back, bring jobs back, all that other stuff. And there's some good things in what he's saying, and there's a path on how to do them. And I think there are enough people who will see that and say it's worth a try because J.D. Vance just is bringing nothing to the table but nonsense, right? I mean, there's just certain things that J.D. Vance has said that certain people, even if they're conservative, even if they're more towards the Trump camp, just aren't going to buy into. So I think that there's a chance there, which all of a sudden sort of starts to open up this idea of Democrats being able to hold on to the Senate. I still think it's a long shot. But I think things are starting to shift a little bit where maybe that there is a chance that Democrats can hold and actually get control in the Senate where they don't have control now, right? Like, I mean, even though technically they do, right? Like they just don't have enough control to not have to cater to Manchin and Sinema,
right?
Like you need to gain 3 or 4 seats at least to sort of neutralize those two. Which Manchin finally came around and Sinema finally came around. But then, I mean, like Bernie's also a problem. But anyway, all that to say is that, J.D. Vance he's going to continue to say really outlandish, ridiculous things, thinking that that's ingratiating him with the MAGA crowd, with the Trump crowd. He's got to make up for the fact that he did come out against Trump in the past. So he's going to try to make up ground and do all this sort of bootlicking in the name of Trump, hopefully to get Trump's support and endorsement. And the more he does that, I think the more he drives the people in the middle away, which, pushes them towards a Tim Ryan. So I think strategically, Tim Ryan's in a good position. I think he's already leading in the polls in Ohio for November. So it's just something to keep an eye on. And look, if Tim Ryan is able to pull that off, then that's a good sign. I don't think it's the great beacon of hope, but I think it's a good sign that there's still a chance for some sense of sanity. If you can start to see some of these things turn over, similar to what happened in Kansas.
Yes, I think that's a perfect segue, because in Kansas, which is one of the most conservative states in the nation, they put on should the state ban abortion, and the overwhelming numbers were that the folks that
So they ended up voting against an abortion ban, and I think that it was like 65% against
huge.
The ban, which is just huge in
especially
politics.
Considering that half of the people who vote can't have one.
Right, exactly. It's
really easy for you and I to take a stand on this because it doesn't physically affect us.
Right. I mean, it's even easier for me because I can't. I'm firing blanks.
And I can't get laid, so there's that.
Right. You put those in?
Yeah. I go, yeah, right. Fuck.
I'm just following your lead.
Anyway.
I mean, if I knew that you were having secret sex that you didn't know about, I would tell you.
that I didn't know about.
Right.
Moving on.
Which
Anyway,
goes back
my
to
joke
goes back to a previous proposition I made for you, which you get all shitty about. I still think it's
What?
me spiking your drink.
Oh,
And then
Okay,
then
yes,
locking
yes.
you in here with a willing
I
lady.
am against you drugging me with a prostitute. I am still against that. Moving on. The fact that this went sideways in a hurry, and I know I was 100% part of the problem.
I don't know why you're so against it. I think it's fine.
You spiking my drink with Molly, and then putting a willing participant in a room with me when I'm on blood pressure medication. Somehow you don't understand why that would bother me. You wanted to, just your heart exploding.
Dude.
Blah, blah. All right, moving on. Kansas overwhelmingly voted to block the state's attempt to
Block the
ban
abortion
abortion.
ban. Yeah.
And that says a lot. It
Right.
says-
I mean, so again, that ties in like, okay, if Kansas can come around and see, like, all right, look, it's not just about people willy-nilly having sex, not wanting a kid anymore, right? Because some of these bans are so harsh and so, like, you have so many, there are multiple instances where women need abortions that aren't related to irresponsible sexual behavior.
Rape, for example.
Right. Rape, incest, minors, the rape of minors. You also have multiple medical reasons why during the course of a pregnancy that an abortion is something that if you don't
Saves
do
the
it,
life of
right,
the
if you
mother.
don't do it, you lose 2 lives. If you are able to get the abortion, you at least save 1. And those, like, you can't tell me that you're pro-life and just like, well, I mean, because there are certain instances where I don't know the exact terminology, but I have read these things from legitimate medical sources, right? I just didn't memorize them, but I want to say it's an atopic or I don't know.
Ectopic.
Yes, an ectopic pregnancy. Like if that goes wrong, like you could lose both the baby and the mother.
Well, the baby's gone.
Right, yes, but you've already lost the baby, right?
life.
But you could lose the
Threatening
mother as
situation,
well.
yes.
And so, like, those are the sort of situations, but the way some of these bans are written, it's like, well, no abortion, right? Like, and so now it's just like, all right, so now you got to get this woman in a short amount of time out of that state and get her to another state. And even if you have money, you can't have more money than time. Right, you know what I mean? Like you can't have enough money to be able to stop time.
100%.
And
I know a woman who went through that.
Yeah,
and
I
she
do.
was
I do
devastated
too.
by it.
Right? I mean, I like close. Like my sister went through this. Right?
Okay.
It's just it's an someone that we both know. I won't mention names. Someone we both know close by went through this not that long ago.
Okay.
And so it's just like, look, I get the religious concerns about it. I get the moral concerns about abortion, but when we've got science that says like there are certain things that where this is medically required to save life.
Sure.
Right? Like you have to take that into consideration. Right? And then you can go into the broader socioeconomic issues of like, okay, so you had 2 people that were irresponsible, but early on that they know that they made a mistake and that they need that bringing a life into this world is not something that they are ready for or responsible to do, can financially handle any way, shape, or form, right? And they want to go in and before the baby can come out and is a viable human, right? And can like because if you bring a baby out after 12 weeks, right? Can that baby survive?
No.
Right. I mean, even exactly. So like before you have something that can survive, right? They make that decision like let's put a hold on this. Let's stop this. In the future we'll be more responsible, but this is the thing. Like then you can get into that conversation and that argument, figure out where that timeline, that cutoff is, right? Where it makes sense, it gives people a chance to sort of figure it out because women miss periods all the time, right? Women miss periods because of stress. Women miss periods because of, just because their cycles get off, because of all sorts of different factors, right? And so missing a period isn't necessarily an indicator that you're pregnant. There's more time that you need, and 6 weeks isn't enough, right? But is it 8 weeks? Is it 10 weeks? Is it 12 weeks? That part I don't know, right? But there's people out there a hell of a lot smarter than me who can actually come up with a better timeline on when the cutoff point should be. right? And those are the sort of things that we should be getting to. No, we don't want to give people just a free pass to go out and be completely irresponsible and idiots. But at the same time, again, it's a private issue for a woman to figure out. And if she says she doesn't want her body to go through this process for whatever reason, then she needs to have an opportunity to deal with that accordingly without the government jumping in and saying one way or another. And that's why Congress, they need to get their shit together, right? And that's really why 2022 is so important, because you need Congress and you need the Senate while you have the White House to get something codified to protect women across the board. Right, and I mean, and that's like, put it in the law so that the Supreme Court can't come back. Well, shouldn't be able to come back and be able to strike it down. Right, with the way the Supreme Court is right now, I have concerns about that. But you have to at least get to that point where you're at least attempting to do it, and then forcing the Supreme Court to show their hand once you get it codified into federal law. Right, and you're not just relying on a Supreme Court opinion, but once you get it codified in the law, passed by Congress and the Senate, signed by the president, now it's a hell of a harder fight for conservatives and the Supreme Court to strike it down. They still may find a way, they still may try, but at that point, at least you've done what you can. Right now, we're basically leaving a lot of women in these red states out to dry. Ohio being one of them. Yeah. Right, Ohio wants to pass, in I'm not sure, and I don't know the laws in Ohio as it relates to abortion just yet.
They had a trigger law,
right?
So they popped in. Some of our listeners hit me up when we did our last show and said, "Hey, I didn't realize Ohio was that far red." I'm like,
"Yeah, it is." You know, I mean, I said it. I've been saying it for a long time. Ohio's not a purple state; we are a red state.
Yeah,
right. I mean,
I wish you were wrong.
Right, but I mean, I think Ohio is a red state. You know, that may have some purple tint to it, right? And you know that going back to our conversation about Tim Ryan, but you know this is a red state, so we live in a very highly conservative state, right? Like my gun rights, I have no concerns about my gun rights in Ohio, but abortion rights and rights for women are very restricted now because of that Supreme Court decision, and this is where we need Congress to step up. We need Democrats to really step up from a campaign standpoint. Get some wins in 22, and then figure out a way to get something passed.
All right, man, we got to wrap this up. We do need to say that what we feared and what you predicted is that Brittney Griner would get the book thrown at her, and she did.
Yep.
She was sentenced to 9 years in a Russian prison. She, like you said, probably will not survive 9 years in a Russian prison. Now, I think there is a movement to do a prisoner exchange. There's her and a former Marine, I think. Yeah,
it was a former Marine, and he's got like a little bit of a sketchy past, and you know, there's also a teacher over there. So there's like they keep adding to the list, which is going to make this harder and harder. You know, and who the Russians want out, that's the big problem, right? I mean, you know, I mean they want the merchant of death.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, they want the merchant of death and another war criminal in exchange for, you know,
a basketball player with weed.
Basketball player with weed, a teacher with weed, and you know, this other Marine with the sketchy past that may have been a spy, may not have been, and I recognize. Look.
You gotta do it. I'm going to say you got to do it.
We can't.
We have to.
We have to what?
We have to give them back.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
You don't understand. You do this.
Is this guy still relevant? He's been in prison for 20 years. Is he still a threat?
Yes.
Is he?
Because a guy like that, that guy didn't come from money. That guy literally built himself up from Russian dirt. So
but isn't he Ukrainian?
He's okay, same fucking difference. The point is that guy will always be relevant because he's the type of guy. He's been doing time in an American prison, Jim. Right? Like that guy spent time in Russian prison before he was here. He's done this time on his fucking head. Yeah. You think that guy's gonna get out and be defeated? You think that guy's not gonna get out and immediately get plugged back in? You think that he was unplugged? You don't think that he wasn't controlling? He didn't have some sort of.
I want to wrap this up with this. we have found the way to deal with him. And that's how we started this show.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the other thing, though. You cannot give him back. Because what happens
drop
is...
a fucking hellfire missile on his ass once he tries to do anything other than...
But then...
If his fucking parking ticket...
Just let me finish. Fine. But then, like, one, you have a major international problem there.
Sure.
The other issue is...
oversimplifying.
The other issue is... then what's to stop other countries from saying, oh, American coming through. They have somebody we want. Oh, who are you? It doesn't matter. We're taking you. And if you want him back, you need to get back this really, really bad person, right? Like, I mean, because now all of a sudden what you do is, like, you put a target on anyone with a moderate level of fame traveling internationally, right? Because if I'm a foreign country and I got some bad actors and they get themselves caught in a twist and I want them back, then what's to stop me from, some B-level basketball player? Like, you don't need to get a LeBron James. You don't need to go out and get those guys. Those guys, you don't want that. But you can go out and get these B-list celebrities that want to travel all over the world, right, and do stupid shit, right? Like, I could easily see a fucking Kardashian being next, right? Like, I mean, just like somebody. And then it's just like, what, are we going to really give up somebody we're really going to give up this terrorist for a fucking Kardashian? Right? Oh, you have to. You did it for Brittney Griner. Like, you can't do it. I know it's harsh, and I feel fucking terrible. But Brittney is going to have to fucking do this time. Right? Like, that's what I would be saying if I'm president. And I would get bashed by all the people and all the whatever.
We're going to get bashed.
But it is what it is. Like, you can't, like, and the punishment is entirely too harsh. She shouldn't even be punished at all. But at the same time, she's been going to Russia for years, and she walked in there with those vape cards knowing that it was against the law. You can't tell me, like, she knew it was against the law. She knew what she was doing, right? This whole, it was an accident. Like, you accidentally packed vape cartridges in your bag? How? How do you accidentally pack them in your bag? And she was going
I'm
into
going
the
to
country.
Maryland in 2 hours.
Right.
And I'll be packing a vape cartridge.
Right, but you're going to fucking Maryland, not Russia.
Exactly, I know.
You know, I mean, like, look,
right.
I flew international, and I made sure, I cleared all my shit to make sure that there was nothing sketchy going in. I was going into I was going to fucking Qatar.
Right.
Right, and Qatar is not Russia. Right, by any stretch of the imagination. Right, like, it's not Russia, but it's a Muslim country, and I went out of my way to make sure that I didn't have anything on me that could even raise a question.
Did you have anything in you?
Well, that's a different story. But I'm just...
Let's go to Anne Heche. We got to shut things down, and then we maybe can sneak in a bonus episode because there's a lot more to talk about. But Anne Heche, I'm a huge fan of hers. She was in a movie called Return to Paradise where she is phenomenal. And
I know her from Volcano.
Okay, that movie sucked. No, Return to Paradise is a great movie. It's a rough movie. You know the movie? Mm-mm. It's Anne Heche, Joaquin Phoenix, and the guy from Wedding Crashers.
Owen Wilson?
No.
Vince Vaughn?
Vince Vaughn.
Oh.
Young Vince Vaughn, young Anne Heche, and young Joaquin Phoenix. Powerful movie.
Look, I mean,
and she was in a car accident. She's been burned badly.
Well, it's a little bit more than a car accident. So, Anne Heche may have been drinking pretty heavily, was in her car. She crashed into a parking garage, and then people tried to come and help her. She kicks it in reverse, takes off from the parking garage, flies down the street, loses control of her Mini Cooper. Her Mini Cooper goes through the front wall of a house. Car explodes, catches on fire.
I didn't read.
Yeah.
I saw the headline.
Car explodes, catches on fire. Anne Heche badly burned. The woman and her dogs make it out. But the house is a total loss. Anne Heche, they had to intubate her. She had
I had
some
a friend that went
serious
through
burns.
that. It's horrible.
There was a terrible scene. Like, when I saw it, the news cameras were up above. They were carrying Anne Heche out. They had covered her in that special gauze. And then all of a sudden, she jumped off she tried to jump off the gurney, and probably screaming in pain because she's,
yes,
severely burned. But someone caught a picture of her going through, like, going past a security camera or something, or maybe it was from the paparazzi, but she doesn't look good and looks like there's a bottle of booze in her car. She's got a history of drinking issues. She's got a history of mental health issues. And so this is not only obviously it's a terrible accident, but if there's drinking involved now look, she's got a long road of recovery dealing with the burns. But she's so severely burned they can't test her, right? They couldn't test her to figure out if she was actually drinking. And I'm assuming when they pull the car out, you're probably not going to be able to figure out if there was booze in there anyway, because I'm sure the alcohol burned pretty quickly. So she's probably not going to face criminal, legal consequences unless there's another way to prove that she was drinking. But listen, I gave up booze about 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I did it because I feared something like this very thing. That's what I was afraid that I was going to kill myself, that I was going to kill someone else. I had been popped for DUIs in the past, and I constantly made the bad decision to drink too much and drive. And so I finally quit because I saw my future being very similar to this. Killing myself in a bad accident, killing someone else in a bad accident, which basically might as well kill me at that point, right? Because I don't know how I'd handle that. Or being drunk, getting pulled over, not cooperating with the police officer and ended up being a fucking hashtag, right? And I saw that as my future, so I gave booze up to avoid it, right? And there's a lot of people saying, well, she's got a history of mental health and we need to be compassionate. Yeah, we do. But at the same time, those mental health issues, right, that I've learned, as a person who's gone through it, who had serious depression from some seriously foul shit that's happened over the course of my life, what I can tell you is that mental health is not an excuse to drink and get behind the wheel of a car, right? Those mental health issues are reasons to go get help. And those mental health issues you shouldn't be bashed for. But once you make the conscious decision to drink, right, which exacerbates the mental health issues, and then get behind the wheel, then the compassion then goes away, and it's you need to be held accountable for what you did. But the biggest piece of that, once she gets through the burn aspect, is to deal with the mental health issues and to deal with the drinking issues. My heart does go out to her. My heart goes out to the woman who lost her home. Hopefully between insurance and Heche's, whatever, they can get that woman right. And I wish the best for Heche, but her uphill battle from here is not only recovering from this accident and the burns, but getting herself right. Hopefully she can do that. She's got some good people around her. I get she's had a rough past, but she almost killed herself. She almost killed someone else, and that's going to be a lot for her to carry. But hopefully she makes it out all right.
All right, let's close it out on that. If we can do some sports talk later in the week, great. If not, that's a good way to close. We are at Whiskey Congress on Instagram and Twitter.
Also, if you can, this week it's the Massage Therapy Conference in Cleveland.
What?
Hey, the National Massage Therapy Conference is here in Cleveland, right? Deshaun Watson's excited about it.
Okay, so Steve's doing dances.
It's true.
Me a lot uncomfortable.
Google it. Google it. Massage Therapy Convention.
We are at Whiskey Congress
in
on
Cleveland.
Instagram and Twitter. We are done.
Deshaun Watson might be there signing autographs.
You're a bad person, and we're done.